Thank you very much, Professor Somchai. We have some time for questions, so if anybody has a question, please introduce yourself and where you're from, and I'll take about 3 right now.
I find it quite ironic that Thaksin becomes a symbol of hope. I mean, Thaksin was not known as one of the poorest and in Thailand, and he was not known as very participative. He has been quite ruthless during his term. I want to remember his policies, discriminative policies in southern Thailand, and also the war on drugs, where we don't know how many people have been killed. So I wonder how he can come. How do you explain that he has become such a feature of identification for the poor? And second is, I wonder about the heterogeneous nature of the red shirt movements. I mean, you're talking about a new consciousness, right? Democratic consciousness, emancipation. And I wonder if I think there are also some strong business elements actually in the red shirt movement, and some alliances between these business groups and some segments that of the population, of the changing population, as you pointed out, right?
Thank you. Does anybody else have a question?
Ian Hollingworth, a retired teacher. First of all, I'd like to thank Ajahn Somchai for his book, Civil Society and Democracy, one of the first books I read when I came to Thailand, and it was a real education for me. I would be disappointed if any discussion about Isan didn't take into account the recent development of the red villages and red districts, which appear to be maturing in a relatively healthy fashion, a relatively democratic fashion, and they appear to want to adhere to non-violence. So I'm wondering if you can make any comment about this development, and if you have any information about the kind of education that's going on regarding the techniques and methods of non-violence.
Thank you.
Alex, first question reflects the class issue among the Bangkok, exactly what I try to show here, because Thaksin, as perceived by the middle class, Bangkok middle class, is, an evil. The corrupted tycoon who, avoid tax and kill, a lot of innocent in down south. But for rural population, this is not what they perceive, right? It's the the Thai Rock Thai Party, which first and foremost, show it that policy party, the policy of the political party matter, and it is Thaksin who has made this become true. So if you ask why the rural people see Thaksin in such a way, you have to put Thaksin into what throughout this morning people have been talking about, the democratization process, which interestingly the very first group who have felt this change in this process are rural people, not the middle class. Well, middle class single out Thaksin as an individual evil, right? But the rural population look at Thaksin as part of the social change, the political change. So this is the difference. Not really sure I answer your first question, but the second, heterogeneity. I think red shirt is different from other previous social movements. I don't really have time to think about this through yet. It's different from Assembly of the Poor, which consists mostly those who are affected by development projects. It's different from the peasant movement in the 70s because it's cross-class movement, right? And cross-class here is interesting too, because if you go to the village, right, you talk to people, you see a combination of landlord peasant, wage labor, right, shop owners, they sit, at the same table talking about politics. You will not see this in 1973, 76 in Chiang Mai, where landlord is enemy of, the tenants, right? So this is a very interesting kind of phenomenon that you see that what unite these people together. It's difficult to say that it's an economic class Marxist way of trying to understand the movement. This kind of explanation will not do in order to understand this.
I think if we look at the Richard as a kind of movement, it's different kind of movements from other social movements in Thailand. But if you go into one province, maybe you see 30 groups of Richard. You go to the one market, you see 7 or 8 groups of Richard. Sometimes they agree with each other, sometimes they disagree. So it's not like an organized movement. So it's a lot of people come together by learning through Richard TV that they will have a gathering and then they come. But they said, I'm not Nopacho, but come to, yes. So we can look at them as in terms of typical social movement or typical social movement organization. And if we look at the Richard, I think we have to go beyond individual. You can understand why poor peasants support bourgeoisie, rich, very rich, super rich businessmen in Thailand. If you look into, I think, a big picture, social structure, more than look at the individual. Because Thaksin represents something that the villagers want. I think that is the reason why villagers support Thaksin and look at Thaksin different from the middle class, the elite. For the Richard village, actually I know just a bit about it, and Richard education I also know just, but we can look at the political education of the Richard in the same way as a typical social movement or peasant movement. So they have to go to one place and an organizer from or leader of the organization come and talk with the member. The Richard didn't work that way. The kind of education sometimes they come from the media, come from radio, come from TV, and then go to meet at the like a restaurant, coffee shop, and then they discuss, they learn, then understand political issue in that way. So it's difficult, different from the formal political education of the social movement in the 70s, in the 60s.
Thank you, and I can take another 3 or 4 questions.
Dan Younger at Northern Illinois University. I'd like to ask you to speculate about what this means for the future of Thai political parties, to the extent that you're comfortable with that speculation. Both this morning and in subsequent panels, I think the issues of Thaksin's appeal have often not been pinned down. How much of it, I mean, there's been references to his appeal in terms of material benefits to people who have not gotten benefits from the state previously, but a lot of the discussion of his appeal has been in terms of identity, the notion that he speaks to people who feel marginalized, who feel second class, and so on. It strikes me, it's been striking me for a long time, that an outsider coming to Thailand and listening to the discussion about politics and Thaksin and all of that might easily imagine that his programs were far more radical than they were, might easily imagine that there were these very steeply progressive taxes being imposed, that property taxes were imposed, that the state was raising large amounts of revenue and redistributing it in a big way. And none of that is, of course, really the case. So that's some of the background behind my questions about how much of his appeal is about identity, how much of it is about material benefits. And my question, I guess, also relates to this whole question of if the red shirt movement to date is some sort of a rhizome-like network process, does that tell us anything about its potential to serve as the basis for a kind of enduring, meaningful political party of a type that Thailand has not previously had?
Hi, I'm Chulalongkorn from the Australian National University, and I have a question for Ajahn Pinkaew. I was really struck by the quote in the final slide of your presentation, and I wondered if you could talk a little bit about what the nature of the history that's being rewritten is. What is the rewritten history that the villager who made that comment to you, what is it constituted by? And I guess the second part of the question also is who are the agents within this history, and how, for example, are red shirt activists positioned, how is the state positioned, how are other institutions either within or connected to the state positioned? Thanks.
I'm Wong from Mahidol University. As a student who studies Southeast Asia's majors, I'm very interested into, Ajahn, you're just talking about Islam as a part in the past used to be a place where it's like communism insurgency, which very clearly is the violence conflict in the region. And what I'm interested in is in those settings of the conflict in the region, are they gone? Is those settings of the conflict gone as you're talking about when the peasant or they transfer into post-peasant society, or the setting of the conflict still there, and which is a potential reason to make the emergence of the red shirt movement? Thank you.
Future Thai political party, I have no idea. Because I'm just an anthropologist. Anthropologists talk about small things. We don't talk about big structure. But I can probably take the identity and economic kind of aspects of the red shirt. I look at red shirt as a process of becoming. So what you asked, how are these relating to each other? The economic reason of joining the demonstration and the movement, and then the pride, identity, the second class citizen. As I already showed in the slides, most of the people who participated in the movement might have started first from how they felt about the economic downturn caused by the coup, right? But years of participating in the movement, years of listening to a lot of people on the stage giving speech, year of getting to know the Northeastern Isan fellows and all that, have opened up their worldview, right? And when Ajahn actually pointed out to me, Ajahn Chayan Ratchakul, that red shirt is not, we cannot look at red shirts as a singular movement, right? It is the emergence and the development of it is associated with the yellow shirt movement, of course, Right? Yellow shirt and movement, you cannot really analyze the two movements from each other, because as I said, some shade of color always have the privilege of doing things, right? If they are put in jail, they got bailed out. But if you are red shirt, you put in jail for many years, right? So the identity part or the self-realization of who they are within the Thai society has been, reinforced on and on, 2 and 3 years. And I think, as I already pointed out, the crucial point of time that really, put a stamp or a marker on them that they are really a lukampa or an orphan, right, is the October 13th, and later on, right, when they seek help from the institute who used to be the sanctuary, for all the people, all the poor. You look at, all the previous projects that its institute have done to the rural area. So this kind of identity is or has been developed through, the process they participate in the movement. Will the rhizome of the movement be developed into a party? I don't think so. This is a question I asked many leaders in the movement too. There might be, as I said, there's a conflict among groups. They are not, this is not a smooth process of, making rural democracy. Some local leaders might want to be MPs, but the majority of, the district levels members and leaders, they want to make clear that the local organizations are independent from the party. During the election last year, there was a saying, เลือกทั้งน้ำตา เลือกน้ำตา mean they elected with tears, right? Local MPs, some of these people used to be Democrat. Some are really kind of, irresponsible, ignorant MP, but they had to choose, they had to elect these people into the party, because Pheu Thai represent, as of now, their party. But a lot of people said that if Pheu Thai did not keep the promise, right? People are ready to do something. So the separation between the movement and organization and the political party is significant. Tyro's question is difficult. That quote I like, and I also like another quote before that, and I try to think very much to what it means, right? This idea of rewriting. Actually, the whole quote in Thai is, ชาวบ้านคนหนึ่งบอกกับฉันว่าครั้งหนึ่งเขาเคยไปเขียนประวัติศาสตร์ที่ราชประสงค์ and this is from a villager's statement. I think it's linked to another quote that I like when I asked one woman market vendor what wretched means to her, and she said wretched means nation, right? And when thinking about nation, she said, what constitutes nation is ชาติไทย right? Thai nation is nature, religion, and democracy. And if you are Thai, you know what it means. And it's very radical. It's a very radical statement, right? So, what did they write at Rat Pasong? Right? It's not just the villagers coming or going there to say we want another election. Actually, that might be the beginning of it, the beginning of the reason why they were there, right? But when they were there, they've been there for long time, in hot weather, in Bangkok City, right? They want to include their ideas and their ideal about what a Thai nation should be in that particular place, right? In that particular space, and that statement came actually after May 2009, right? So that is a significant kind of statement that reflects the people's ideology of what they think about or what they want or what they wish the Thai nation should be for them, right? Agency of the movement, I'm not really sure if I get your question. I think Russian movement is different from, as I said earlier, from other previous movements. One of the things is, it is the first kind of, where is the first kind? Assembly of the Poor, you have NGO people working to mobilize, right, the middle class, right? I was in NGO one time, how they work in mobilizing people in the local area. But Red Shirt is interesting because it's villagers going to mobilize, to organize people in the villages, right? It's the villagers who listen to the community radio directly, right? It's the villagers who read Khao Sot and Matichon newspaper, right? And not Daily News, not Thai Post, not to mention Manager, right? They read Mahachon, they read, right, their own media. Also, so if you ask who's the one who, connect, make the network, they are local leaders and they are villagers. It's the first time that I saw that, villagers are very politically active.
From movement to parties, I want to share a bit on this issue. In Latin America, we see a lot of social movement that turn into political party and win and can form the government, win an election, form the government. In my idea, I think Red Shirt will become a political party or not. It depends on how the conflict develop, how the conflict, the present conflict develop in the future. If Thailand has a kind of deep crisis, I think that will change the movement. Or, for example, in Latin America, they have an economic crisis from neoliberalism that enable the movement to recruit a large number of the people to support them, and they turn into a political party and win an elections. Yeah. In Thailand, if we have a kind of crisis that big enough to draw more people to support the Red Shirt, they can become a political party. It depends on, I think, but for the moment, I don't think Pheu Thai party can implement policy that have progressive enough when compared to the political parties in Latin America. I think we need more progressive political party than Pheu Thai. But to push the Red Shirt beyond Pheu Thai need a kind of crisis, deep crisis, to push them go beyond the Pheu Thai. That's my idea. On the conflict during the armed struggle and the present conflict, I think it's different set of conflict. That kind of conflict, I think, linked to the farmers' movement during the 1990, like the small-scale farmer or from the poor, that linked to the conflict during the armed struggle in the term of land rights, that in the area that formerly operated by the armed struggle. I think because of we have armed struggle in that area, so it's called problem of land rights. But the the present conflict, it's different. I think it's more on the market related, like the fund, the capital, the commercial, agriculture, or welfare, that sort of thing. So it's different. So now we and because of the changing nature of the conflict, now the conflict is covered the large number, more than 10 millions. If you look at the vote, you can see different. In the 70s, CPT has pocket of farmer support here, there, very small. So for the red shirt, it's huge. That's different. I think this is based on the nature of the conflict.
Thank you very much. We have time for one more quick round of questions, maybe 2 or 3 short questions if anybody has anything.
I want to sort of build on Danny Unger's question about political parties, but I want to take it from a different angle in terms of organizational structure of the red shirts. And my question is, since you both do ethnography on the red shirts but in different regions of Thailand, my question is, what is the organizational structure like, both at the local level and, say, in Bangkok, and in terms of the relationship between the local, regional level and Bangkok? You're both alluding to the fact that it's more decentralized. It's not a sort of a typical social movement that is centralized top-down. But could you go into more specifics about the mechanics at the local level? How do they mobilize? How do they organize? How do they move people to Bangkok? When in Bangkok, how does coordination occur? The recent Bonanza concert in Khao Yai, massive amount of people, is that coordinated? What is the mechanisms, the instruments of this mobilization? Because clearly there is a lot of organization, and my question is, how does this dynamic actually work out?
There are nodes of connection. During the movement, the UDD Bangkok sent someone to the, to the city, to Chiang Mai city, right, and trying to sort of appoint some of the local leaders as the coordinators, right? But that doesn't really work because funding did not come from them, right? People recruit funding by themselves. They organize concerts, they organize street fairs, that sort of thing. And there was story of the Bangkok UDD members trying to act that they are someone important and want to direct the strategy and all that, right? And that was reported back to Natawut to change someone else who is more humble, understand the local context, right? That kind of thing. The district level are not necessarily under the direct command of the Chiang Mai city, organizations. They are I think they are independent from each other. But during the peak period of demonstration, where they go through this kind of nodes of collaboration, right, to contact some of the key leaders there. Can you send 10,000 people from here and there, right? Right now they use Asia Update as a means of communication. At the local level, they use community radio stations. They SMS, they talk, right? But each level has the key leaders, right? And at district level, they also organize their own activities, which are not necessarily relating to what happened in Bangkok, right? During the aftermath of May 2009, right? During the Palakor Chukchern period, district level organized their own talk, secret talks, right, outside the eyes and the ears of the government officials, while there was almost no activities in Bangkok, right? So it's really I would say, autonomous. They are ready to unite if there is, the central kind of concern, like right now is the amendment of the constitution law, and they would contact the key leaders in, the local area, or actually, the most important, I think, event is the last year election. The Chiang Mai is a classic province. Phang district organized themselves to get rid of the long-standing MP from Phumchai Thai, right? Phumchai Thai party, right? And get a very unknown guy from Pheu Thai party, into place. And this was done by local villagers themselves. Phang is a special case because you have a lot of former communist farmers there, and they use the kind of old tactics of mobilization and all that, and it's very very stronghold, right? Chiang Mai, people say that there are two districts which are the strongest, the Phang Mae Ai Chai Bagan cluster and the Sameng cluster, right? So cannot use the kind of old type or old form of, let's say, peasant federation, or even assembly of the poor. Different, totally different.
Okay, this is the last call for questions. Yes.
Yeah, actually, this is not my question. It's just from someone who asked me to read this question to you. Okay, for Ajahn Pinkaew, I think probably Ajahn Somchai can answer as well. Could you please explain more research media, especially community radio, how this kind of media play a vital role in bringing different level of research together? What are typical messages that carried by this media?
And if anybody has one last question. No? Okay.
It depends on which period, right? So during the Abhisit period, of course, a lot of community radio criticize the Democrat Party, and it depends on which station too, right? You have 92.5 radio station, which is the Rak Chiang Mai 51 station, used to be very hardcore, right? So during the mobilization period, community radio station is the main organization that mobilize people to go to Bangkok, right? So very powerful, very effective, right, in getting large numbers of people participating in the movement. In the aftermath of the killing, the massacre, of course, the community radio station were closed down by the military, right? The re-emergence of the community radio station, they have changed their role because of the criticism inside the movement itself, right? That there are a lot of violent message, a lot of violent kind of ways of attacking the opposition. Nowadays, some of the radio stations trying to bring intellectual aspect, right, of political analysis into the research community by reading articles, which I think is very difficult to read, but by using northern dialect, right, and explain to the people, for example, articles by the Nitirat, articles by Ajahn Thongchai and all that, right? Read it in a local language to the people, so they act as the kind of media, right, that link the knowledge, political knowledge, which used to be once very kind of confined, restricted, only among the Bangkok people. I don't think the Bangkok people read Nitirat or Ajahn Thongchai's piece either. But they act, right, to bridge this gap, right, between the middle class world and the rural population. I think this is what they are doing right now.
Okay, thank you very much. Oh, do you want to add something?
Just small point. In Isan, the most popular radio station rely on the phone-in, villagers phone-in, and then have a talk, exchange the idea, and link villagers from one village to another. Yeah, they have a kind of network through the local radio station. This is quite effective in the term of when they exchange the idea. Sometimes there's a emotion involved. It depends on the situation, like Ajahn Pinkaew said. During the time of the conflict, this kind of phone-in has a kind of emotion. That's real. So, but the main source of news come from Richard TV station, yeah, Asian Update. They rely through local radio station. That is the main. But the phone-in will have more discussion on the issue.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank our panelists again. And we're going to take a 15-minute break or so. We'll be reconvening at 3:30 for the panel on monarchy and democracy. Thank you.